Here's a mental model you can use to make faster decisions if you consider yourself indecisive. And the thread that runs through everything I'm about to say is this. Most decisions aren't heavy. We just carry them that way. I've been working with brands on several decisions in the past week around tariffs, rebranding, pricing strategy. And I've noticed where people are getting stuck overthinking decisions that don't need to take so long. In many cases, the cause of indecision and paralysis comes down to mislabeling the type of decision that we're facing. In this model that I want to share with you, there's 3 types of decisions that we can use to alleviate indecision and things that make us feel uncertain. So type number 1 is this one over here, and we will call this one the one-way door. And the defining trait of type 1 decisions is they are irreversible. What are some examples of irreversible decisions? One of them could be deciding to have or not have a child. I have one right now who's 2.5 years old. And going into that decision, I knew that it wasn't something that could be reversed. There's something like donating a kidney. That's something you can't really come back from. And then there's, let's say, selling treasured heirlooms to make a quick buck. Or not even to make a quick buck, but to just declutter your home and lighten the load. These are pretty obvious decisions that actually do require some deliberation. And going back to the thread here above, these decisions actually are the ones that are a bit heavier and merit a lot of contemplation. So bringing it back to our context of e-commerce and business, let's talk about some more contextual examples that are relevant to your day-to-day. So a type 1 decision that is virtually irreversible could be something like selling a controlling stake in your company to an outside investor. Another one could be signing a personal guarantee, so a PG, on a multi-year 7-figure bank loan for you to finance inventory. And then another one that can do is issuing equity to early employees without clearly defined vesting schedules. These I would consider more on the side of irreversible relative to other decisions that you'll more commonly be facing. So that is type number 1. Let's go over to type number 2 and talk about what it's called and some examples of them so that you have them for reference to compare your decisions with. Type number 2 is called the two-way door. And the defining trait of two-way door decisions is that they are the opposite of type 1, which is they are reversible. And they tend to be relatively easy to reverse in the grand scheme of things. What are some examples? One could be, one that is relatable for a lot of us, is something like changing your phone's home screen wallpaper. You don't like it, or you eventually stop liking it and get bored of it. It's very easy to change. Another one could be trying a different playlist for your workout. If during your first set of squats, you realize it's not pumping you up enough, it's fine. Just pick another song for your next set. Another one is testing a new body wash. It's not difficult to ditch one that you're using or testing out and going back to an old one or swapping it out for another one that you want to test. These are sort of decisions that when you back even 3 weeks from now, you wouldn't be even remembering deliberating on very much. What are the parallels when it comes to e-commerce and business? An example of this could be launching a new ad campaign inside of Facebook ads, Google ads, email marketing. because if it doesn't do well, all you need to do is toggle it off. Or if it's gone out, for example, in an email, you just don't do it again if it wasn't successful. Another one that we see a lot of brands spend a fair amount of time on is this one over here, which is testing a new logo or creating a logo for a new product or a new brand, which especially in the early stages is very reversible. And even over time, once you've had a meaningful amount of traction, is still reversible in that you can change logos anytime. Some examples of brands who have done this, we can talk about Meta and Facebook, we can talk about Twitter and X, where they didn't just change the logo, they also changed the brand name. And then there's the last one here, last example, which is trying a new price, which in most cases, at least in your direct-to-consumer channel, is something that is very flexible and also very impactful when it comes to landing on the unit economics that meet at the intersection of what's favorable for you and favorable for your customers. But the way that we behave with some of these decisions, which are all type 2 decisions, is we treat these decisions as if they are type 1 decisions and that we can't go back. So a mental trick that you can think about is if you agree and if you categorize the decisions that you're facing as type 2 decisions, you can almost put them on the same level as these over here, where in your own personal life, you'd say, yeah, this is not a big deal. It's something that I can easily change my mind on or easily gather data on to then make an even more informed decision. When it comes to type 2 two-way door decisions, there's a phrase that I like to use as a mantra, and that is this one over here, which is don't make decisions, make experiments. Because when you think about the vocabulary of experiments, the weight of your decision all of a sudden lightens a ton. The permanence of the decision is no longer conflated as something that's a forever decision, but rather something that you hypothesize, you test, and then you evaluate. And if we were to zoom out and evaluate a lot of the decisions that we encounter on a day-to-day basis inside of our work and our business, we will start to see that most of them fall into this category, and that the mistake that causes us to become paralyzed is to conflate them with an irreversible decision. All right, door number 3, aka type number 3, we will call a two-way door with some hassle. And by that, I mean the decisions that you make, they're reversible, but they're a pain to reverse, but still possible. What are some examples of this personally? I'd say something like painting your bedroom takes a lot of time to do. Like if you change it from white to black and then you want to go back from black to white, it's just going to be a hassle, but it's doable. Moving to a different city, that's actually something that I did for a period of my life. And I'd say it's not as easy as changing your phone's home screen wallpaper, but it is something that you can change your mind on after you've gotten some information. So I went from Toronto to Vancouver, to Toronto, to San Diego, to Toronto, and each time it was some work, but it wasn't a forever decision that I had to lock myself into. And another one could be something like switching banks, where it's just a hassle, but it's not impossible. So bringing it over to the e-com side, what do we have? We have something like choosing Shopify instead of WooCommerce and switching the platform that you're using to run your website with and your direct-to-consumer operations. I've done this type of migration a few times and it's a pain. But worst case scenario, you can go back or you can try something else. Like you switch over to Shopify, you don't like it, you'd rather custom build your stuff instead. That's an option. There's switching who you're using as your 3PL, which in some cases actually having redundancy can be a benefit. And then another one that's relatable for a lot of people is hiring on a new team member. So people, personnel, consultants, agencies, they don't have to be permanent decisions, but they can be challenging to go back on or change your mind on if things don't turn out the way that you expect. Type 3 also ends up being kind of like type 2, where we can miscategorize the weight of the decision, leading to a lot of fatigue and paralysis. When it comes to these decisions, type 3 decisions, a shortcut or a shorthand memory tool that you can use for these decisions could go something like this: test, then invest. And I actually learned this from a marketing agency that we hired a number of years ago, because this agency that we worked with actually invested their own money into their clients' offers to then get compensated on a CPA basis. They liked the concept of doing a small test project, getting a little bit of experience of working together, and then getting more serious about what working together longer term looks like. With type 3 decisions, the way to approach them is asking the question if there's a way for you to run a tiny little experiment before going all the way in. So as an example, with painting your bedroom, right? Maybe you paint just one of the walls as opposed to all the walls. And then for the Shopify versus WooCommerce decision, maybe it's you build out the Shopify site and you have the team or other people you know come and use it. And then you decide whether or not you want to bring everything over. Maybe you start with just a few products, and then the users who go on the website aren't consumers, but rather people in your circle. And when it comes to hiring a new team member, instead of bring them on outright full-time right away, maybe you do a trial project with them, which is basically the only way we hire these days. And a little side quest here, but when it comes to hiring in particular, one of the phrases that we like that we got from Perry Marshall is auditions over resumes. And that is kind of like how in Hollywood, actors will audition for a role even if they've done other projects. The same can be said for anyone you're looking to bring in and hire, whether that's a team member or an agency or a consultant. The audition is a little trial project to just feel out the experience on both sides before getting more involved or making a commitment to both sides. So when we take a look at the 3 types of decisions, we can see most decisions actually aren't heavy. We just carry a lot of them as if they are. Type 1 are the ones that are truly heavy and do require some deliberation, pausing, gathering information, and even consulting with people that you trust. Type 2 are the ones that hold the least amount of weight and don't necessarily need to be treated as decisions, but rather as experiments. And type 3, they're kind of like type 2, but they have a little bit more hassle. And the framework that we can use for these is to test and then invest.